Imagine you going to sleep on a Tuesday, and by Friday, a computer system has literally invented an entirely new branch of mathematics.
Right.
It's raised an army of like 10,000 factory robots, and it's completely forced the global financial system to drastically restructure human labor.
It sounds totally made up.
It really does. It sounds like a pitch for a science fiction film, but that is the exact 72-hour window we are unpacking today.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
So we are looking really closely at a source document called Chronicles of the Intelligence Acceleration, and specifically we're mapping out Wednesday, May 20th through Friday, May 22nd of 2026.
A very busy 3-day.
Insanely busy. And our mission for you today listening to this is to understand how this massive surge in AI capabilities over just 3 days is, well, it's actively rewriting everything, from molecular chemistry all the way to orbital space infrastructure.
Yeah, the scope is just massive. It is. And, what that actually means for your daily life. So, okay, let's unpack this, because looking at this timeline, the sheer density of these breakthroughs, it feels less like a software update and more like a localized singularity.
Well, the density is the point, really. I mean, we aren't looking at incremental corporate announcements here or, isolated software patches.
Right.
The Chronicles document this specific threshold moment. This 72-hour window, it basically marks the exact phase transition where artificial intelligence shifted from being a digital tool.
Like a chatbot.
Exactly, something you actively type a prompt into. It shifted from that to a physical and economic engine operating with its own sustained agency.
Sustained agency. Okay, so to understand how it made that jump into the physical world, we have to start with the raw cognitive power that kicked off on May 20th.
Right, the Google announcements.
Yeah, Google came out swinging at their I/O conference. They released Gemini 3.5 Flash and Gemini Omni, and they showed these massive speed jumps.
Oh, huge jumps.
And they immediately integrated Gemini conversational ads directly into search. But here's the friction point that really stood out to me in the notes.
Yeah.
It actually comes from OpenAI. So an internal general-purpose model of theirs disproved Erid's planar unit distance conjecture in discrete geometry.
Which is just wild.
And I mean, discrete geometry isn't exactly light reading.
No, far from it. I mean, Pollard just posed this conjecture decades ago. It essentially asks how many pairs of points in a flat plane can be exactly 1 unit of distance apart.
Okay, so it sounds simple, but it's not.
It's incredibly not simple. It's a notoriously complex puzzle involving just massive combinatorial possibilities. But the significance here isn't just that a machine solved a tricky math problem.
Right.
It's the nature of the solution itself. Historically, AI has been, a retrieval engine or a pattern matcher.
It just remixes human knowledge.
Exactly. But disproving a long-standing mathematical conjecture means the AI is generating entirely novel foundational truths that humans had not yet discovered.
Okay, I mean, it's one thing for an AI to crunch a giant spreadsheet, right?
Sure.
But this feels like turning on a pocket calculator to figure out a 20% tip at a restaurant, and the calculator suddenly just spits out a completely new branch of mathematics.
That's a great way to put it, actually.
It is reasoning its way into the unknown.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that reasoning capability is the shift from reactive to proactive computation. We see another glaring example of this proactive shift just 2 days later in the timeline.
Oh, the forecast bench stuff.
Exactly. The source notes that a large language model successfully matched the performance of human super forecasters on Forecast Bench.
Super forecasters.
Right. They're these elite analysts whose entire skill set revolves around predicting highly complex, chaotic global events by basically weighing thousands of variables.
But how does a language model even do that? I mean, is it just like reading more news articles than a human can?
It's synthesizing probability. A human super forecaster looks at geopolitical tensions, supply chain data, market trends, and they intuitively assign a probability score to a future event.
Okay.
An LLM doing this is synthesizing millions of contradictory data points, running internal probability models, and arriving at a strategic forecast that rivals the best human minds.
Wow.
It is demonstrating strategic foresight.
Which brings us to Alibaba's model, Quen 3.7 Max.
Oh, yeah.
Because the notes state it executed 35 hours of continuous autonomous tool calling. And I really need to clarify what this actually means because, matching a super forecaster is one thing.
Yeah, that's impressive enough.
But running for 35 hours straight sounds like something entirely different. Wait, so Alibaba's AI isn't just answering a prompt, it's practically working a full-time human work week without any supervision.
It goes a step further than that. What's fascinating here is that Alibaba's model isn't just working a 35-hour shift. It's essentially acting as its own manager.
Its own manager. How?
Well, in a traditional setup, a human prompts the AI answers, and then it literally just sits there and waits for the next command. In an autonomous tool calling scenario, you give the system a high-level objective, and for the next 35 hours, the AI defines its own subtasks.
It breaks the project down itself.
Exactly. It opens necessary software tools, it writes code, queries databases, and crucially, it recognizes when it makes an error, debugs that error, and continues executing the broader strategy.
So it course corrects on its own.
Yes.
Yeah.
The intelligence is no longer just deep, it has endurance.
Okay, so we have this durable autonomous intelligence that can, like, invent new math and manage complex software projects for days on end. It makes total sense that the immediate next step in the timeline is humanity pointing this giant laser beam of brain power at the physical sciences.
A wetware revolution.
Exactly, biology and chemistry. The notes mention Google launched Gemini for Science, partnering with Nature and over 100 other organizations.
Yeah, they're basically building an operating system for the scientific method.
Wow.
By applying that continuous autonomous reasoning to scientific databases, they're trying to condense the timeline of human discovery.
And the real-world results just in the 72-hour window are staggering.
They really are.
I mean, Chimera and a company called Cusp AI, they use generative AI to design over 5,000 novel materials specifically targeted at removing toxic PFAS.
The forever chemicals.
Removing those from water supplies. 5,000 materials.
And a matter of days.
And in biology, Eli Lilly's retatrutide showed historic weight loss trial results. Colossal Biosciences, the de-extinction company.
The woolly mammoth people, yeah.
Yeah, they successfully hatched 26 chickens using an artificial eggshell. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
There's an entry that gave me serious pause. It's from a startup called Bex.org.
Ah, yes, the neurotech.
Right. They successfully restored partial functionality to the intact brains of deceased donors for neurodegenerative testing.
It's quite the headline.
I mean, I'm looking at this and thinking, okay, incredible medical promise, absolutely. But reanimating deceased brain tissue, that sounds incredibly sci-fi and honestly a little unsettling. How do we reconcile that?
I know, it pushes the boundaries of our medical conventions, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at the underlying mechanics of why Bex.org is doing this, it makes perfect clinical sense.
Okay, walk me through it.
When you are testing treatments for neurodegenerative diseases, like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's testing on a cellular level in a simple Petri dish, it only gets you so far.
Because it's just flat cells.
Exactly. A Petri dish lacks the incredibly complex three-dimensional architecture of an actual human brain. You need that physical network to see how the disease and the potential cure actually propagates through the tissue.
I see.
So by restoring partial functionality to these deceased donor brains, Bex.org is creating a highly accurate, living topological map for testing.
Oh, wow. So it's fundamentally about fidelity.
Yes.
Providing the AI with the most accurate biological hardware possible to run its simulations.
That's the unifying thread here, really. AI is acting as the ultimate accelerator for material sciences. Whether it's Bex.org with neural tissue or Chimera simulating molecular bonds for PFAS filtration, the AI is taking what used to be decades of blind trial and error in a laboratory, mixing chemicals, waiting weeks for cultures to grow, and replacing it with predictive computation.
It just does the math instead.
Exactly. It simulates millions of interactions digitally and only physically tests the winners.
But there's a massive bottleneck there, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely.
Because we now have an AI that can invent 5,000 new chemical materials for water filtration in a single afternoon.
Yeah.
But an invention is completely useless if it stays trapped in a server.
It has to affect the real world.
Right. To physically synthesize those chemicals, test the filters, or, carefully handle deceased donor brains in a lab, the AI needs hands.
It needs a physical presence.
Exactly. The digital breakthroughs are demanding physical execution, which perfectly explains why the next 24 hours of our timeline shifts entirely to robotics, embodied intelligence.
The transition from the digital realm into the physical supply chain is an absolute necessity at this point. The computation has completely outpaced human hands.
And the robotics industry is clearly answering the call. I mean, Figure announced their F.03 humanoid robot achieved 7 continuous days of autonomous package sorting.
7 days.
7 days straight. And then over in Shenzhen, China, a company called Engine AI activated a 10,000-unit humanoid production line to mass produce these robots.
10,000 units at once.
10,000 units. When I read that, I realized we aren't just building neat little lab assistants anymore. This feels like the early days of the Model T Ford, but instead of standardizing cars, we are standardizing synthetic labor.
That is a brilliant comparison. We are basically printing physical API endpoints.
API endpoints, like in software.
Exactly. For the last 20 years, software companies scaled their businesses by plugging into digital APIs, right? Standardized pieces of code that allow different systems to communicate easily.
Right, like plugging Google Maps into an app.
Exactly. What Engine AI is doing by standardizing the mass production of 10,000 humanoids is creating APIs for the physical world.
Wow.
If an AI needs to move a box, synthesize a chemical, or operate a heavy machine, it just calls on a humanoid robot to execute that physical function.
But how does the AI actually know how to do that in the real world? Sorting packages for 7 days straight isn't like running a software script.
No, it's very messy.
Yeah, you have friction, gravity, irregular box weights. If a robot drops something, it can't just hit backspace.
And that is where embodied spatial reasoning comes into play, and it links directly back to the cognitive leaps we discussed from May 20th.
The reasoning models.
Yes. The AI inside the figure F.03 robot isn't following some rigid pre-programmed script of movements. It is running real-time physics simulations using the same proactive reasoning that allowed the LLM to match the super forecasters.
It's predicting the physical world.
Precisely. It assesses the visual data, predicts the weight and trajectory of the package, and continuously corrects its own motor functions on the fly. It is Alibaba's 35-hour autonomous software endurance transposed into physical hardware.
It is a complete paradigm shift.
Totally.
But as I'm reading further into these chronicles, I'm noticing a massive friction point.
The power grid.
Yes, the resources, this entire ecosystem, the super smart software, the medical simulations, the armies of humanoids, it is incredibly thirsty.
Insatiably so.
It requires an astronomical amount of computing power and physical infrastructure. I was looking at the smartphone market data here, and it says high bandwidth memory now makes up 63% of AI chip spending.
Right.
And the notes say it is actively starving the smartphone market of necessary memory parts. Are you telling me that because AI needs so much juice, everyday consumer phones are getting starved of memory parts?
Yes, that is exactly what is happening. The global supply chain has a strict, finite capacity for fabricating silicon.
There's only so many factories.
Right. And high bandwidth memory is crucial for AI because these massive language models require an enormous amount of data to be shuffled in and out of the processors instantly.
Right.
Without it, the whole system bottlenecks. And because the AI industry has an almost bottomless demand for this memory and bottomless pockets, they're simply outbidding and outprioritizing consumer electronics.
The numbers driving this outbidding are just massive. I mean, NVIDIA posted a record $81.6 billion in their Q1 alone, purely from selling the hardware for this computation.
Incredible numbers.
Intel is desperately pushing PC makers to their new 18A manufacturing process. And Google and Blackstone just entered a $25 billion joint venture specifically for TPU compute infrastructure.
Yeah.
Let's unpack the hardware side for just a second. What exactly is 18A, and why is a TPU worth a $25 billion mega project?
Okay, so 18A refers to Intel's manufacturing node, which essentially means they're shrinking transistors down to the sub-2 nanometer level.
Just tiny.
To put that in perspective, we are hitting the absolute physical limits of atomic physics here. They're trying to cram as many processing brain onto a tiny piece of silicon as physically possible.
Wow.
And a TPU, or tensor processing unit, is a custom-designed chip built specifically for the complex matrix math that neural networks rely on. It is far more efficient than a general-purpose computer processor.
Okay.
But fabricating sub-2 nanometer chips and building sprawling TPU data centers, that requires staggering amounts of electricity and cooling.
And the demand isn't just coming from the tech giants either.
No, it's everywhere.
The notes mention that hobbyists are now using tools like Seedance 2.0 to edit full cinematic films at home. So you have this massive consumer compute demand stacking right on top of the corporate demand.
And the terrestrial infrastructure simply cannot handle it. You cannot endlessly build gigawatt data centers next to suburban power grids.
People would riot.
Exactly. The physics of cooling those processors, the sheer real estate required, and the energy demands are hitting a hard ceiling on Earth.
which forces the most dramatic leap in this entire document.
The space jump.
They are moving the infrastructure off the planet. Orbit is becoming the ultimate server farm.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the only logical expansion path. Space offers infinite real estate. It provides unhindered, constant solar energy.
Right.
And most importantly, it offers a near-perfect vacuum for cooling those red-hot TPU processors.
And the capital being thrown at this orbital jump proves it isn't just a fun sci-fi concept.
Real money is moving.
Oh, yeah. Anthropic is paying SpaceX $15 billion annually for compute. SpaceX themselves filed an IPO prospectus claiming a $28.5 trillion total addressable market.
Trillion with a T.
Trillion with a T. And that market specifically includes orbital compute infrastructure.
Yeah.
Plus, right in the middle of this 72-hour window, SpaceX successfully launched Starship V3 on its 12th flight test and announced plans for lunar Starlink connectivity.
It's all connected.
They are quite literally building the orbital heavy lift highway at the exact moment the AI companies need to get their servers off the planet.
When a single quarter of revenue for NVIDIA is $81.6 billion, the capital absolutely exists to fund an off-world migration. They are physically lifting the thermal and computational burden off the Earth's surface.
But funding a multi-trillion-dollar space infrastructure and, building factories to churn out 10,000 humanoid robots, that requires deep liquid capital.
Extremely deep.
And to free up that kind of capital, companies have to drastically restructure their existing operations.
And that leads us to the fallout.
Exactly. The final section of our deep dive looks at the human cost of this 72-hour window. Meta and Standard Chartered, a giant social media company and a massive global bank, both announced major structural layoffs to transition toward what they're calling AI-native structures.
That phrase right there, AI-native structure, it represents a fundamental severing of the traditional corporate growth model.
How so?
Well, for a century, if a bank or a tech firm wanted to scale its output by 100 times, it had to hire 100 times more people. Human headcount was inextricably linked to productivity.
And now that link is broken.
Completely severed.
Because ClickUp, a major productivity software company, they cut 22% of their headcount in one swoop during this time frame.
Huge cut.
And their explicitly stated reason was to pivot to a 100x agent-orchestrated framework. So, if you're listening right now and wondering how this touches your daily life, this isn't just blue-collar labor being replaced by robots in a warehouse somewhere.
Not at all.
Standard Chartered and ClickUp are corporate offices. We are talking about project managers, financial analysts, coders.
White-collar work. The very AI agents that Alibaba proved can work autonomously for 35 hours straight, defining their own tasks and managing their own errors.
Right.
Those agents are becoming the fundamental unit of corporate productivity. An agent-orchestrated framework allows a company to scale its operational output exponentially while simultaneously shrinking its human workforce.
And the wealth being generated by this shift is immense. OpenAI recorded $5.7 billion in Q1 revenue alone, and they're preparing for an imminent IPO.
Historic numbers.
The chronicles also note that billions in philanthropic funding are suddenly becoming liquid because early stakes in mature AI companies are cashing out.
Right.
So you have this massive explosion of concentrated wealth on one side and then widespread structural layoffs of white-collar workers on the other.
It creates a severe economic friction point.
Yeah.
This raises an important question, maybe the most critical question of this entire transition. How will global economies actually function when the foundational building block of corporate growth is an autonomous digital agent rather than a human wage earner?
That's the million-dollar question.
Or trillion-dollar question. The economic gravity is shifting just as violently as the technological gravity.
It really is a complete rewiring of the world's operating system.
Absolutely.
So let's just take a breath and recap this staggering 3-day trajectory. On Wednesday, May 20th, we see AI disproving discrete geometry conjectures and matching elite human super forecasters.
The brain power upgrades.
Right. By the 21st, that autonomous reasoning is deployed to invent thousands of new chemical materials and map deceased brain tissue for medical breakthroughs.
And physical sciences.
And by the 22nd, that exact same digital endurance is placed into armies of humanoid robots. The corporate workforce is being slashed to integrate autonomous software agents, and the biggest tech companies on Earth realize they need so much computing power, they have to launch their servers into orbit on Starship rockets.
3 days.
3 days. It is the physical manifestation of an exponential curve.
It really is.
But I want to leave you with one final thought, kind of building on the trajectory we've mapped out today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We discussed AI companies moving their massive server farms to outer space to solve the energy and cooling crisis, right?
Right.
And we simultaneously discuss the mass production of humanoid robots capable of endless, autonomous physical labor.
Connect those two realities. If Starship is providing the heavy lift and AI agents are demonstrating long-term autonomous execution, how long is it until those AI systems are physically constructing, expanding, and maintaining their own orbital megacomputers entirely without human hands?
Oh, wow.
Are we looking at the foundational blueprints of a completely independent autonomous machine ecosystem being built right now, just a few hundred miles above our heads?
It's like looking at a sci-fi novel and realizing the construction crew is already on site.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the rapid changes around you, stay curious, and we'll catch you next time.